Welcome to Lesson 7, Autodesk Inventor Beginner Series. In this lesson, we're going to draw the part you see on the screen before you, which will have some things in common with the part that we drew in Lesson 6. You can see it as a round part, but we are going to do things very differently. One thing to keep in mind about these lessons and about Inventor in general is that there's not always one exact way to do everything. Now, if we go back and look at the part we did in Lesson 6, we can come and see that we started it with a sketch of a circle and extruded that circle then to create a solid. We added to that by creating a sketch on the front of the part and then extruding that as well. Then went on to add the hole and thread features. This one's going to be different. This is not going to be a series of circles that are extruded. We're going to take a different approach. So let's start a new part and see how we do this. We will begin again with our sketch on our XY plane, but we're not going to start with a circle. We're going to start with a straight vertical line. But one important thing about this line, it is going to be a center line. Click on the center line option under here. Click on the center line option up here above Format. Click on the origin, and then we're going to draw a vertical line. Say OK. Zoom out a little bit and kind of get that position towards the top of my screen. Let's put a dimension on it and make it 4 inches. Zoom to where we can see it. Now this center line is going to be the basis for the rest of our part. Now I want to turn off center line because I'm going to create regular geometry for the rest of this sketch. The rest of it will be a series of straight lines. So we click on the line command, come back to the origin. We'll draw a line directly out to the left. We will go down, then back to the right towards that center line. Down again. These exact numbers don't matter for right now. We will come in and add dimensions to them as soon as we get this full profile created. We're just clicking point to point, and as we go along, making sure, let me hit undo and back up a couple of steps. From this line coming down, notice when I get vertical, there, I have that little vertical constraint icon show up. That says when I click that line into place, it will be vertical. One other point to notice, I get down here to the bottom and see that little horizontal dashed line that appears. That means I am lined up with that bottom point, so that when I come over, that shows me a little coincident constraint icon that pops up there that says that closes my profile. Now, this is where this center line comes in real handy. I have drawn half the part. Don't follow along with this just yet. Hold on, let me show you what's going to happen. We're going to use the Revolve command. We're going to revolve this thing to create the profile of our part. So what that means is that this distance from center line to the edge is just the radius of our part. But once I have it defined as a center line, look what happens. It creates a dimension that is a diameter that goes all the way across to an imaginary line out the other side. I want to give that a diameter of 2.5 inches. Notice how sometimes things adjust, may not go exactly where we want them after we apply a dimension. But we just drag it back to where we want it to be. Now let's continue applying dimensions. If I dimension from the top to that first line there, that creates the flange of my part. This is just a regular dimension, 1/2 inch. Let's come down to the next step, go center line to that edge, and that will be 1 inch. Again, notice it goes out the other side of the part. Now this lower part here, let's give this a diameter of 0.750. Now I can see I've got one line left that hasn't turned black. It does tell me I have one dimension left that I need. So I will click here to here, Place that dimension out at the side at 0.250. Everything is locked in place. It tells me my sketch is fully constrained. So now I finished that sketch. Let's click up here and go back to our home view. Now we use the Revolve command. The Revolve will take a closed profile. If I have this center line drawn in here already, and it knows that's the center line, it will select that by default as my axis of rotation. Notice it goes to 360 degrees. It is a full rotation. If we wanted to, we could make it a 90-degree part, but that's not what we're making right now. We go back to this, give it a full 360-degree rotation, a fully round part, and say OK. Now we will use F4 to orbit. Just a reminder, the free orbit button is over here. It does the same thing. We can rotate around with our view cube and get different views of this part. That is the home view. And in this position, it is ready for me to start a new sketch on that top face, where we will place 4 points. We'll put some tapped holes in this one, as we've done before. We'll look at some constraints that we can use to help us get these points exactly where we want them. Notice as I placed them, they sort of snapped in position relative to that origin, but they're still free to move around. Let's use the horizontal constraint to make sure these two stick out to the side, the vertical constraint to make sure these two stick above and below. Put a dimension on there of 0.875. And now every time I place another dimension, I will go back, click on that first 875 to reference that dimension so that that stays in a nice circular pattern. Every body is 7/8 of an inch, 0.875 off the origin of that circle. Right click, finish sketch. Use the hole feature. Let's put some tapped holes through here. Let's make these be a 3125. Let's go to 5/16, 18 again. We've used that before. We'll go through all, full thread. Say OK. Let's rotate again and look at the end of this part. Put a new sketch up there. And in the center of that sketch, we will place a hole point. Say OK. Finish that sketch. As we create this hole, it's not going to go all the way through the part. Let's make it be 0.375, 3/8. It is a 3/8 16. Let's uncheck this box that says full depth. Go to termination, and we want to give a distance or a hole depth. And we can give the hole 1 depth. Let's make the hole 1 inch deep, but the actual threads only have to be 0.750. Say OK. That part is done. We will click save and call it lesson 7. So now go practice this. Draw a new part. Draw a center line down from the origin. Draw some geometry off of that. Put some dimensions on it and revolve and just see what you can do with that. So practice a little bit and then come back and we'll see you in lesson 8.